turn into places where you don't just check up on it once a day. You spend hours and hours on these K-pop websites, and not just looking at photos or anything. You are making friends. You are basically building community and building friendship with others around the world. And I think that's pretty cool. So that's how it helps Asian Americans, but also helps non-Asians. What it gives to us, and I'm not just focusing on this because it's the story of my life, but I think it's important to say that for the first time, these social media sites and online communities are open to all people. They're not Asian only, they're not white only. You don't need to provide your name or your photo or anything like that in order to join a website and to, take full advantage of it. I think that's a really important thing that we hadn't had before. Groups at school, like a Korean student group, might only admit Korean students, and they have a right to do that. But an online group, you don't have to show what you look like or what your gender is. You could be whoever you want. You could put a K-pop star as your avatar, and that's fine because that's what everyone else is doing. And that leads to just the sheer amount of time that people spend on these websites leads to, I think, changes in cultural identity. So just my personal experience, me spending hours and hours on Soompi and Viki and Drama Beans and all K-pop changed the way I look at myself in relation to other people. I would suddenly start to, come into a room that's diverse and has all kinds of people, and I see the Asian people first. Okay? This might be something that Asian people do automatically, but it's something that I grew to do just because of the sheer hours I was putting in. I would say, oh, there's an Asian, there's an Asian, there's an Asian. I wouldn't point like that, or I wouldn't even go talk to them, really. I wouldn't even try and go be their friend. I was too shy. But just little changes like that signal that there are larger changes going on psychologically, and that's important. That's something that we haven't seen before in the past 10 years or so. And I think it's because of the internet. It's because of online communities. And the other thing that we're seeing in the non-Asian population that we haven't really seen up to this point is an incredible interest in language learning, cultural immersion, travel. Okay, and same with Asian Americans as well. Before Korean pop came around, I have to take a foreign language, lame. Oh, I might as well take Spanish, it's easy. It's kind of like English, right? Wasn't it? Okay.
I don't even use that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, some people still doing that. But now, now that we have discovered that there's this whole other world out there, and people who speak other languages, beautiful languages, with really awesome words and phrases, 짱, 죽을래, oppa, okay, all of these phrases that you pick up during your consumption of K-pop and K-drama, you just can't help but absorb them and want to learn more. So I think that is a really cool aspect of K-pop. If you look at certain countries in the Middle East, for example, in Egypt, I found an example of students in Cairo who demanded that their university open a Korean language department. Like, you never hear about that. People demanding for a language department to be built. But they did it, and it's happening in schools around the US as well. There's a huge demand for people to learn the Asian languages now, especially Korean and Japanese. And I think that's a good thing. I don't know about y'all, but I think that's pretty darn cool. So here's where we are now. Oh. You're welcome. We are in a time where things are coming full circle now. K-pop has traveled and infiltrated into all the different regions and markets in the world, especially in the United States. And Americans are taking notice. They want to jump in. They want to get involved. If you're a K-pop fan, there are a few different stages of fandom. First, you start watching music videos. Oh, he's so hot. He's so cute. You just watch, you just watch. And then you start to sing along. But you don't know the words. You're like, la la la, I don't know, and then you start to pick up one word at a time. You know what sarang means. You know what oppa means. Okay? And you just start to pick it up. And you start to be able to sing along. Okay? Viki, by the way, has a cool karaoke feature where you can...
Oh, God.
Settle down. We have a cool karaoke feature where you can sing along to a music video with the lyrics that are Romanized. So not the Korean letters, but in English letters, if you want to read like that. No. Both are pretty easy. You just have to take the time to learn. So you start there, you're listening, and then you start to sing along, and then you start to go to karaoke with your friends and belt it out, because you know all the words by heart now. You don't even need to read anything. Not that you can read Korean, but you act like you can, because you're just in the zone. Okay, you feel like you are a K-pop star. And you know what? Maybe you can sing better than Girls' Generation, better than Wonder Girls. Maybe you can. Thankfully, K-pop has noticed and has started to introduce audition programs and started to host auditions here in the United States and in other countries. They realized for the first time that people who didn't grow up in Korea are just as obsessed and just as passionate about Korean pop culture as they are, and might even be more talented. So they want you to audition and send in your videos of you singing K-pop covers and dancing so that they can recruit you and bring you into the K-pop world. That's fascinating. Eric Nam, a friend of mine, has made it through one of these contest shows called NBC Star Audition, and now he's a guy from Boston. His Korean's not that great, but he is now a K-pop star. He has now just had his debut and is making the rounds on all the K-pop shows. SBS Inkigayo, Music Core. He's singing on all of those, and he's just our age from Boston, and just kind of enjoyed K-pop and put covers of himself singing on YouTube online, and he got noticed and was invited out to Korea. So it can happen. It can happen through the audition shows, but it's also happening now because the Korean music labels are recognizing that a good way to plan ahead for the future and get your group into the international spotlight is to directly recruit international members for your groups. J Park was a member of the boy band 2PM, and whenever they went to the US or interacted with international media, J Park and Nick Kun, who could also speak English because he's from Thailand and the US, they could interact with the international media in a way that the other members couldn't. So it's not just that they look good, but that they have bilingual abilities, they have intercultural abilities that the K-pop world now sees as valuable. Tiffany from Soneashide is another example of someone from the US, her real name's Stephanie, by the way, someone from the US who has made it to the top of the K-pop world because they picked her out and knew that she would be a good move strategically to put into their group, because later on, maybe 5 years after debut, they knew that they were going to go to other countries. They knew that they were going to try and break into the US and that they needed people who could speak English to do it. So that's where we are now in the K-pop world. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention Simon and Martina. Okay. Simon and Martina, actually Canadian, but they are a couple who call themselves Eat Your Kimchi, because they moved to Korea and started a video blog on YouTube to talk about their experience in Korea. Talk about how hard it is to learn Korean, how tough it is to adapt to Korean customs, and how to cook Korean food. And now they talk about everything. They do a weekly review of K-pop music. They talk about dramas and actors, the news of the day, and they're just hilarious. I really encourage you to look up Eat Your Kimchi, because they're really cool folks. But that's another example of people who are just normal, but who were fascinated with Korea moved there, and now they're a big deal. Now they're being invited to Korean music events, award shows. They're being invited to conferences out here to speak, you know, as experts on Korean culture. And that's what's happening now. That's where we are. Americans and, you know, people from other countries are diving into the Korean pop scene. We're no longer just consuming it. We want to jump in and be a part of it. And that, I think, is how globalization happens. I think that the Korean pop wave and K-drama wave is the best and coolest example of modern globalization that we can see to this day. All right, so just to review, Korean entertainment started in South Korea, of course, and then hopped over to Japan. Japan was the first one to really eat it up and consume it. And then it went to East and Southeast Asia because it was cheap to produce and cheap to buy, and the Southeast Asian audience really loved the cultural values and the trendiness in the shows. And from there, it went to where there were big pockets of Koreans living outside of Korea. So it went to Australia and New Zealand. It went to LA and New York. And that's in the early 2000s and late 90s. Where we are now is kind of the third wave, where it has now taken over Latin America, going into Europe. You might have heard that SM Entertainment has a concert in Paris that they've done 2 times and has been just sold out. And I mentioned before the school in Egypt. The Middle East is also getting interested in Korean dramas, as well as India. And each place has their own relationship with Korea and their own understanding of Korean culture, but they all fit into the global Korean wave, which is still going strong. It's not stopping now. So that is it. That's all. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
How did you get into K-pop?
I got into K-pop in high school because I grew up in LA, and there are a lot of Koreans in my high school. And one of my best friends would always come to school with a binder with K-pop stars on it, like shirtless guys. You know, who's that? Do you really want to know? That's how it started. She's like, well, there's this website where I got all these pictures. It's called Soompi.com. And that's how I got started. I found Soompi, I found Viki, and I was just obsessed immediately. I couldn't turn away. I'm sure many of you share the same story. Anyone else?
Oops. Who's your OTP?
Rain. Anyone else?
What's OTP stand for? One True Fairy. What? One True Fairy.
Oh.
I just had to pick one.
She just said all of them.
Yeah. She said, I thought this other member from Girls' Generation, Jessica, was American. I was like, yeah, but I can't put all of them in there. Tiffany was the first who came to mind because she has my name.
I believe.
Okay. How are we doing on time?
42.
42? And when is it in?
45, I think.
Oh my, 45? Okay. In that case, Brittany, you can stop recording.